evening. We haven't done a live in the evening in quite a while, and so I wanted to take a second and just kind of introduce myself. I'm Scott Shepard, host of the Flower Podcast. I love talking with florists and flower farmers and sharing their journeys as far as the floral industry goes and kind of things they've learned along the way. So if you haven't or you don't follow the Flower Podcast, you can download it and subscribe on almost any podcast app that's out there. So also, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, so that way you'll get notified when I go live. Because a lot of times like this, it's just I had a lot of great things and I wanted to make sure that I shared some of them tonight before the opportunity passed. This is July, and July is traditionally American Flower Month, and the American Certified Flower Organization has declared this the month for American flowers. And there's so many great local farmers or American farmers. You know, we have a lot of great growers from Florida, California, Oregon, Washington that ship all over the country to florists and wholesalers. But we also have a lot of great flower farmers in our own backyard. So I wanted to share a few things. First, speaking of backyard, this week's episode is with Erica Penn, and she grows amazing flowers here just north of Nashville. And one of the flowers she really does an amazing job with is dahlias. And trying to grow dahlias here in the South is sometimes challenging because it's so hot, and like it is in Texas and so many other places. And she's done a few things to help mitigate that, and she shares all that in our episode. And I think I have a bunch of her dahlias here that I'm going to show also. So anyway, but we were at a local market just yesterday, and I saw this new grower, and she's only been growing about a year, but she had some really beautiful bouquets, and I wanted to share them with you. And I bought two of them. And the thing I loved about them is she really grows some unusual blooms that you don't see traditionally in bouquets like this. First of all, she's got, let me see if I can point it out here. Like this lizianthus is the Roseanne Brown. And I just thought that's not one you see every day, much less in a bouquet. And she has some beautiful pink varieties and things. Here, I'm gonna pull this sleeve down. She's got this really pretty sleeve on here. But she has a lot of stems in this bouquet. And I wanted to just take a second and show you what she has in here, because there's some really different flowers that I think is worth mentioning. First of all, you can see just it's a decent sized bouquet. The stems aren't super long, but it's still got a ton of flowers in here. Of course, she's got some beautiful zinnias, which I believe this is probably the key lime orange. I think that's what that is there. She's got some Queen Anne's lace. She has some basil, which is great. This is cinnamon basil, which I love. You know, that's the one thing. When you have these kinds of bouquets, and they're not huge, but then when everybody wants to go and smell them, right? And when you do, it's just cool to get that fragrance of basil. It's something unexpected. What else does she have in here that I wanted to show you? Oh, let me see if I can find it. She's got some yarrow. Here's a little piece of peach yarrow. And, oh, this was kind of cool. So silene is a flower that you see sometimes in a lot of wedding work, and I really wasn't expecting to see it, but there it is. And it might not seem like something super special, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because these little green balls that kind of form end up with a white flower, and even after the flower's spent, it is still a beautiful flower to grow. Now, maybe, oh, here's another good stem. You can see that really well there. You can see the little white flower maybe too. Here, let me see. There we go. But it's really, this was a nice little bouquet. I have to say, I was surprised at all the different flowers. She's got cosmos. She's got zinnias, like I said. She's got some celosia in here. Here is some of her Roseanne Brown Lizzie. You know, when you are doing bouquets of this size, you can take all those side shoots and laterals to add to the bouquet. Then she made another bouquet over here. And the name of her farm is Blythe Flower Farm, and she literally lives around the corner from me. I have to go visit her farm sometime. Maybe we can share that with you. But here's another bouquet. Totally different. Well, not totally, but it does have some differences. The thing about it that I thought was so amazing is she also had here's more of the silene. She has mageratum, which is another great flower if you don't grow it. If you do bouquets like this, it's great. Here's some more celosia. It's a different kind. And then she had this really pretty, it was just this combination of, sorry guys, here we go, of these greens and peaches. But this straw flower is this bright pink straw flower, just popped against the green. And this color combination was really, really pretty. There was something else in here I wanted to say that I thought was different. Maybe not, maybe I'm remembering. Oh, here it is. And this is not a very big stem, but here's another one. She has a couple stems of this mini carn. And again, it's just a filler. It's not going to be a big focal flower. But this was something she started from seed. I believe it's a floret seed, is what she told me. So anyway, so this is another great way to support American flowers. Is if you're at a farmer's market, maybe you don't grow flowers. Maybe you're not a florist. But when you visit a farmer's market, hey, why not support American grown flowers by buying from someone like Blythe here. And I think that's a great idea. So that was the first thing I wanted to show you guys. But I have a ton of other flowers to show you that are all locally grown. Well, not all of them, but the American grown, let's say that. So here are some nice big zinnias. This is a really popular color. Sometimes this variety shows up a little coral. Sometimes it's more salmon or peach. But these are Benaries, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful zinnia. Very, very popular. Very, very popular for a lot of wedding palettes and summer palettes because they just pop. And then here is some Oklahoma. This is Oklahoma. I broke a couple of these. This is Oklahoma. This, I believe, is cream. And it kind of reads a pale yellow. Sometimes it can actually read a little white. But these are really more great varieties here. All right. Now, if you have any questions or anything and you want to just pop it in the bubble, feel free, because we're going to really show some super exciting things. Okay, so this is a flower I had to show last week and didn't. And got to show you this. This is Philippendula. And when it came in, it was super, super tight. In fact, you can kind of see this bud right here, how tight they are. And then it starts to open up. And it's like a cloud. Here, let's see. It's like a little pink cloud. It's so amazing. It's like a stelby, but it has this texture of like a stelby. But it is, you can see it's kind of flat. It doesn't have the spike to it like a lot of those flowers have. And, but it's just super, super fun. So it took it about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days, and it started opening and it fills out. And it does, it looks like a big cloud of cotton candy, and it's really, really pretty. So this is called Philippendula. Definitely one that I would consider growing. And you can see how tight this one is right here. And this will continue to open up. This is not done opening. Sometimes people are afraid to cut things too early, but you can even see in this stem that's fully open how it's got a piece that is yet to open, but it's working on it. It's moving its way up. So this is Philippendula. This is a great perennial to grow. Most of the country, this should be a perennial. Okay. That actually was grown by Bethany and Charles Little up in Oregon. Now, this is also from them. I got a few things from them. And this is Lysomachia. And a lot of people love Veronica. And Veronica is great. It has that super thin column flower, kind of like this. It tends to not be as fat of a flower, but I will say that Lysomachia, and it's pronounced Lysomachia, but I say Lysomachia. Lysomachia, even though it is fatter, here, let me pull one stem out. Even though it's fatter, see how full it is? Now, Veronica typically is completely straight up, kind of like this, and thinner. Lysomachia tends to have a little curve to the flower. And if you grow Lysomachia and you plant it, and it's happy where it's planted, it will be super prolific. In fact, some people might even say it's invasive, but it will just spread and spread and spread. And you kind of have to kind of keep it under control. I would probably keep it weeded. And in fact, I know people who will even mow it down at some point and then let it try to reflush with a second wave of blooms. But there's not a lot of branching on it. Like sometimes with Veronica, you'll see some branching, but these are pretty much all single stems, and some of them are smaller than others. But Lysomachia is a great flower for weddings, for anything. It's a white. It just holds up super well. And like I said, if you're looking to add perennials to your cut production, this is a super easy one. It's also named loose neck goosestrife. Yeah, I think that's right. I think I might have switched some letters around. But yeah, Lysomachia is great. And there is a yellow one, and there's okay, so there's one of them in this family that's kind of purple. It's kind of got this plummy purple. Flowers are not as big. They're not nearly as open and exciting. But if you're looking for a tough plant that will just really, really shine, Lysomachia. Lysomachia is great. Okay. I'm really excited about some of these flowers today. Well, I'm excited about all of them. So cosmos is a super popular flower, and everybody that, there's a lot of growers in California that grow it to ship. And sometimes we bring it in because we have to. We don't have a choice in the matter. Well, cosmos, it is shippable, it is great, but because it spends so many days in a truck, and we have to usually ship it in a hamper or percona in water so that way it stays fresh. Well, it'll last for a few days, and it just doesn't ship well. I love the cosmos, and hi Helen, yeah, it's a great flower. Thanks so much for saying that. I specifically have really fallen in love this year with these, and I think these are the cupcake varieties that don't have the individual petals. I just like them because I feel like, I don't know, let me know if you guys think differently, but I'm curious if you think these last longer. I think with the individual petals, they tend to bruise and show a lot of brown quicker. But this is definitely a series that I really love. This week's guest on the podcast, Erica Penn, grew these. These are from her farm, and she grows white and she grows pink, and all the white flew out the door, so I grabbed the pink so I could show you guys. But this is definitely one that I would do. Again, look for the ones that don't have the individual petals. Try them. If you haven't tried them yet, these are some I would try. I feel like the flower size is great when you're doing any kind of work, like a florist, event work or whatever. This has a lot of motion to it, which always makes things seem a little bit more wild. But it's just a great flower. So this is a cosmos. And I will put that over there. Yeah, okay. So Helen's from Australia, and last week we had Craig Scott on the podcast, who has an amazing farm where they grow all kinds of Australian wildflowers. And some people here in the U.S. are trying to grow this, and I believe this particular bunch actually came from South America. But last year we had some growers growing this locally, and that is Telotus. And Telotus kind of has a Celosia feel to it, kind of a cross between a feather Celosia and clover. It's kind of the feel of it. It definitely has a lot of branching in it. This is something that you can get plugs. One of our friends at Farmer Bailey's, they sell plugs for this. So this is one of them. I think this one's called Joey. and it's called Telotus. I think it's like Exalta or something like that. But I'm trying to remember what you guys call it in Australia. I want to say it's Molly Molly or something like that. I can't remember. But I was really excited. In fact, I'm working on a blog post because there were 5 varieties they grew. And this is a flower that's not going to just, probably take over the world with, its excitement, because it is kind of soft and delicate. But I feel like it's a great flower, especially if Celosia is not available or in season. This is a flower that gives you a softness for certain kinds of work. And this pink on it is like this pink and silver. Anyway, I love it. Telotus. And it was just one of the topics we talked about last week on the podcast. Now, sorry, I gotta take a drink. That's water. Wanted to show you this. I've had some growers coming up and showing me marigolds, and even though I love marigolds, some of the varieties, like the white one's not as fragrant, and some people don't love marigolds because of the fragrance. I get it, especially if you're doing, work around food and things like that. Fragrance is often something that really deters people from, like, I guess things like wines and different foods, kind of interferes with the flavors. But marigolds, I feel like in the summer, there's just nothing like beautiful marigolds. And of course, Day of the Dead is a very popular flower for that. And, and there are several colors. Orange tends to be the best-selling one for us. There is a yellow, which is kind of like a highlighter yellow. Not my particular favorite, but sometimes it's good and it works well. But I wanted to show you the stem length on these, because a lot of times people cut these too short, because you don't want to waste these laterals that are on here. And so people go in and they cut these flowers super short, trying to preserve these laterals. But like a lot of flowers, like zinnias, for example, and dahlias, by cutting into the plant, you cause some lower laterals to start, and you end up with some prettier stems. One of the things that Eric did in our podcast this week, which I really appreciated, was, try to cut and produce flowers with the expectation of the person using them in mind. Like, how are they going to use them? What are they going to do with them? And cut accordingly, whether it's the cut stage, as far as how open they are, or the length of them. Marigolds are one of those flowers that, unless you're making garlands, it's really a good idea to have some longer stems on these flowers, because a lot of times people need them, and you can't make them longer once they're cut short. And I feel like you get a lot of benefits from them. I will say that the white variety, is it white swan? I'm not sure. But the white variety, which is still like a buttercream, it's not a true white, does not smell nearly as big or strong, but the flowers are smaller. So it's not as fragrant, which is a good thing if you don't like the fragrance. And the flowers are smaller, which I feel like they're not that small. They're kind of like a ranunculus size. But these are really beautiful, and I wanted to share them because a lot of people start planting these things kind of late because they actually like the days getting shorter. And great flower for October, November, just because of the color, but also for Day of the Dead, which I know we sell tons of marigolds for that. And I think it's great. It's a great flower for that. Okay, I'm gonna set these down. I wanted to show you Dahlia. Of course, this is one of the dahlias that Erica grew, and they're like trees. I know, she does such a great job. And you can see how she leaves a lot of foliage on them. She even leaves these buds on here. I don't know that these buds will really do anything, but it's the flowers that are the showstopper. So I kind of wanted to take a second, because a lot of times people will want to cut these buds off that are kind of up and above the flowers, which I get. And I'm gonna do that real quick to show you. But do you see, I don't know if you can tell, how big this bunch is? And it just seems bigger. And I think having this extra foliage, these extra tips, which can sometimes be used in smaller things, are really great. But I'm gonna, like for example, I'm gonna try to take, here, we'll take this one off here. And so you can't really use that in anything, but if you cut these tips off, you'll definitely see these amazing dahlias here. Look at this. Isn't that amazing? In fact, I'll cut this off right here. And you can really see it well. And burgundy is a very popular color later in the season, and I would really recommend growing a variety of burgundies. I know Erica grows some smaller ball shape sizes or styles, and then like a medium ball, and then this type right here. And they're just big and beautiful, but they're tall, and by cutting tall into the plant, it forces the plant to produce more branching, and she pinches them so that way they do produce more canes. But by keeping them cut at a good length, you will continue to get more and more and more flowers and longer stems, just like with zinnias. So it's definitely something to consider. All right, I've got a couple things that you might not have seen before. So I'm gonna show you this funky one first. Okay, so you know artichokes, right? Artichokes like you would eat or get at restaurants or a grocery store, I mean. This looks like little miniature artichokes. And the blue part is actually the flower. And it kind of reminds you of something like from the Bachelor button family maybe. But you can see this is 3 stems and they are very branchy. Look at all this. I'm trying to pull one apart here. You can see that is one stem in front of my face there, one stem, and look at all of those buds. So if you're doing dried pieces, if you're doing smaller pieces, personal flowers, it's all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors. But this, did I say what this is? It's not an artichoke, it's a cardoon, and cardoons are very similar foliage, similar growth habit, love the same things. And so if you grow artichokes, you might want to try growing cardoons. I feel like cardoons are better than artichokes, not for eating, but for design work because they're not as big. Sometimes artichokes are so huge that they're hard to work with. They got bigger, fatter stems, but cardoons they have big stems too, but you can cut some of these lateral branches, like here. I want to cut this one off right here. And there, that is just one little branch off of that huge stem. It has a decent stem length to it, and they're not super big, but they kind of give you a cross between like a thistle and like a succulent with that green kind of texture and color. So I could see this small flower here being in a boutonniere or in a bridal bouquet, something small but kind of fun. But this is a cardoon, totally growable here and really fabulous. And so if you've never grown them, you might want to try them. I think they might be kind of fun. All right. So we've talked about a lot of different kinds of flowers. I want to show you a native. I know a lot of times we've talked about different people that or different flowers that have been taken to other countries that were North American natives that have been hybridized, and then like solidago or liatris that come back to us. So sometimes y'all like to give me a hard time for this particular friend of mine, but I've got to share it because someday something's going to happen with it, I'm sure. And that's pokeweed. So pokeweed, its botanical name is Philippendula, and this particular one is Americana. It is a native to North America, and this time of year it's bloomed and it's setting fruit. And some people, hate this. You don't ever cut it when these start to turn purple or blue because they will bleed and make a big mess everywhere. But they hold up great in bouquet work. They hold up great in design work. I cut these back on Friday. Here it is Monday. You can see how well they're holding up. And you can cut them up into short pieces, or you can leave them tall for big arrangements. But it is really great. I know it's kind of hard to see, but this little white flower, which isn't that little, will hold up and be great. And you can kind of see the berries are in the center of that, and those will come to be like that. Once these start turning and they start becoming like an olive green, you don't really want to cut them because it's like fruit. When you cut them and then you start using them, they will continue to ripen, and you don't really want to do that or use that, because if it starts to ripen, sometimes it'll get that black blue berry on it, which stains everything. So even if I were to cut this and use it, and I saw fruit on it like that was starting to ripen, I'd cut it off. I just go ahead and cut it off and only leave the green ones on there, because this will last sometimes 2 weeks without any major issues. So that's Pokeweed or Philippendula, and it is, it's like a lot of the flowers we work with. You don't want to, it's kind of, I don't want to say poisonous, but it is kind of toxic, and you want to just be careful with it. But it holds up great, and it does a really great job. Now, one thing we do talk about here on YouTube and on our podcast and different other forums is foliages. And foliages are a whole nother crop that I feel like gets not utilized to the full extent. A lot of times you have, if you have a small property or farm and you're trying to grow cut flowers, you might not have space for foliage, which I totally get. But if you do, it's especially if you're making bouquets, kind of like what we were showing here in these mixed bouquets, it's great to have some foliage to kind of help fill in, to kind of help stretch your blooms. And this variegation is so pretty because it just brightens things up. It has sort of this chartreusey green edge on this green. Now, you might wonder what it is, and I'm curious if anybody knows, but this is called Weigelia. And usually you see it solid green and it gets kind of this trumpet pink flower on it. And this particular one, Charles Little grows for its foliage. We don't even ever see it in flower because we use the foliage and it does so well. I'd love to have some of this in my garden someday. Maybe we'll have to work on that. But yeah, this is Weigelia. And I always joke that it's fun to say that in the South, say Weigelia. But it is, this is a big bunch, and it's probably 15 stems. But it flies out the door at the wholesale house, and people really love working with it. And I feel like on bigger pieces, it fills up a lot of space, adds a lot of color. The chartreusey green variegation on it brightens things up and allows other colors to pop against it. So like here's that marigold. Kind of see how that orange really pops against that orange green. I wonder if I've got, let me see if I can pull. Here's one of the salmon zinnias. Again, it just pops against that green. So it's a great filler, color, foliage, and you can get a lot of bang for your buck with it. So again, this is Weigelia. It's variegated Weigelia, and it's a lot of fun. Now, Celosia is a crop that we typically get in a 5-stem bunch. And so this is a nice big tall bunch, and you can see the big fat heads on them. I know that I've actually bought Celosia like this before to try to save the seed from, but this one was cut at a good stage and it does not dropping a lot of seed. So it's really, really beautiful. I love some cockscomb Celosia. This particular variety is not as tight and compact, which I think is a benefit because it kind of takes up more space if you're looking for something in bigger arrangements. I feel like Celosia, like we were looking at some of the plume Celosia in these little mixed bouquets, which is great. I think that's great in bouquet work and things. I think this gets a little big for bouquet work, but if you work with tropicals or you do hotels, things like that where you need flower, or corporate work where flowers need to last a long time, Celosia is great. Darker colors are better than lighter colors. A lot of the golds or persimmons sometimes show some bruising when it's a coxcomb, and so you want to be careful about that. But these darker colors hold up well, and they last a long time. And they mix well. I think the texture and color mixes well with tropicals. If that's something you do, that's something to consider. But if you're doing bouquets, a lot of times this is a bright flower. Imagine big sunflowers with this. Also, one thing is if you're at a market and you're selling flowers and you have these big fat bunches, a lot of people want a mixed bouquet like I showed at the beginning of this, but sometimes they want that big pop of color for I don't know, for their kitchen or for a part, place in their home where they want something to be bold and stand out. And maybe you sell sunflowers and you buy a bunch of sunflowers and you buy a bunch of celosia, you mix it together, and you have this bright, bold bouquet or design that you can make at home. And it's easy. It's very easy, very tough, very long lived in a vase. So celosia is always great, and that's one of those flowers I would definitely think about. Okay. Now, scabiosa is a flower that some people love to grow. Some people are a little bit not so sure. And this particular one, I think they call it star flower, is often, people don't like to grow it. I'm trying to see if this has one on it. Well, this one's not so, like this was one of the flowers that kind of just fizzled out. It usually has a white bloom on it. They're not super big, and they're very nothing. They're very boring. The white flower is just not worth cutting as a cut flower. However, in fact, I wonder if there was one in this bouquet because I thought I saw one in here. Anyway, but what is fabulous about it is the seed pods. And these pods, so what is this? June, July. So this is mid-July, and these were grown in California. And you can see this is like a 1, 2, 3, 6 stem bunch. But look how much product is in this bunch. So sometimes it's not about stem count. Sometimes it's about value. And when you get a bunch like this, there's a lot of perceived value. If you're doing personals, let's say you're doing a boutonniere and you just want a side stem, and all you have to do is you can cut one of these little guys off, and that's just one. That is one little teeny tiny seed pod. And there's all kinds of seed pods on here. So what an incredible value, I think. And so this is a scabiosa pod. It is definitely worth having in a mix because it's great in bouquet. Also, you can dry this flower and a lot of times use it in some production. You want to make sure you cut it at the right stage because if you cut it too late, it will kind of fall apart. But it is scabiosa pod. It's a great flower for this time of year. So, can you believe all of these flowers have been grown here in the United States or could be grown? The only exception was the Telotus that we did a minute ago. And some of the prettiest Telotus that I've ever seen actually was locally grown. So it's definitely something that can be done. And all of these beautiful flowers, ask for them. If you buy flowers from a local flower farmer, they always want to know, what can I grow? What can I grow that you're interested in? And sometimes they're looking to, broaden their horizons and not just grow zinnias or marigolds or sunflowers or celosia, but to try to grow some other blooms. And, it's like some of the prettiest, let me see if I can show you this. Some of the prettiest lizianthus that I've gotten is locally grown Lizzie. And a lot of times people don't understand that. They're so used to lizianthus from South America that doesn't have a high bloom count. They have to cut it really tight so it ships well. Or you get it from California and you never know how many stems are going to be in a bunch, which sometimes is an issue and sometimes isn't. But this is one stem. One stem. It has four big flowers, and like this bud here will open. It'll probably be a little more green when it opens. This one might open, but it is completely usable. Like I could probably cut this, like I just broke that one, but you could probably, here, let me just make one cut. And here, we've got 3 stems. So if you're doing design work, what an incredible value. A lot of times people think, well, it's expensive because it's local and, lizianthus is cheaper other places. But I can tell you right now that if you buy cheaper lizianthus as an import, it will not have as many flowers on it. And it's actually probably more expensive because you don't get the value in it. You don't get the number of blooms. Again, this all came from one stem, and you can't stretch it as far. So this is definitely one of those flowers that if you've not tried local Lizzie, and you might say, oh, it seems expensive, try it. And I will say this, that when we started working with a couple of people last year with local lizianthus, they were cutting it a little tight. And even though it opens, it's hard because when you're a florist and you are buying local product and they cut it super fresh and it doesn't, or it's a little tight, and you, even though it'll last and it'll open up, it's hard because you need to use it that day a lot of times, or maybe in the next 2 days, and you don't have time for it to get all glorious like this. Just tell your growers, because a lot of times, if they leave it on the plant and open up on the plant more, it'll even be bigger. It'll be showier. It'll even be better than if they cut it super tight and bring it in. Also, a lot of people want to grow, like in this bouquet. Let me see if this is a good example here. A lot of people want to grow some of these varieties. I think this is, I don't know if it's mariachi, I forget, but you can see that it's like a single versus a double. And again, it doesn't cost a whole lot more to grow this one from this one. I mean, the plugs might be more, the seeds might be cheaper for this, but what a perceived value. It's kind of like, this is competing with South America, this isn't. This is totally running away with it. And so if you're interested in growing Lizzie, again, my friends over at Farmer Bailey do a great job with all kinds of incredible plugs. I know I've worked with some growers. I was a grower last year to kind of help pick some varieties to grow, and it's such an incredible difference. You really don't need to even think about it too hard. But this is one stem of local Lizzie that I cut into these 3 pieces. Boom, you're done. Now, I will show you one thing that's kind of a cool trick. Wasn't planning on this, but I will. I'll show you anyway. So when you get single Lizzies, sometimes when you get these from different places, they kind of have this sort of tulip shape. They don't always open up all the way. But lizianthus is one of those flowers you can reflex. And my friend Joseph Massey showed me this trick, and hopefully I'm doing it live, so hopefully it'll behave for me. This flower is a little tight, and the fun thing about doing this is it does make the flower seem bigger. It's a little extra work, which is a little frustrating if you're in a hurry, but you can open this flower and voila. It almost looks like a different flower. So a second ago, if you're just joining us, this flower looked like that. What a difference, huh? What a difference that makes, forcing the lizianthus open. Once you do this, it lasts really well too out of water like this. But you can still see, like, this now looks bigger than this other flower, but I think this ruffle, it almost looks like a rose or a peony. So definitely worth looking out. So everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I don't know if you have any questions, you want to pop them in. We've talked about so many flowers today. So if you're just joining us, be sure to go back and check out some of the things we've talked about. We've talked about some local bouquets that I bought at a farmer's market yesterday. We've talked about cardoons and celosia and cosmos. We've talked about Lysomachia, which is a fabulous perennial to add to your collection. Philippendula is another great little pink cloud flower. We talked about some foliage. We talked about local dahlias. Crazy. But a lot of amazing flowers. And I know, again, I get this question more than any other question from local farmers is what to grow? What do people want? And that's why we've been trying to get on here every week to show you what are some options. Everybody likes to grow zinnias, celosia, and sunflowers. All fabulous flowers. But when everyone's trying to grow the same thing, sometimes you're trying to find something that will help set you apart. And if you're doing mixed bouquets, it's fun to have some big focal flowers. But if you're trying to do a mix, it's also fun to have some fabulous different blooms. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure if you like this kind of content, hit the subscribe button here on YouTube because we want to keep bringing this to you, and it's just really helpful to get your feedback to know, what is it you're looking for. Anyway, all right, you guys have a great week. Don't forget, we have a new podcast episode that just downloaded this morning with Erica Penn talking about growing dahlias, which everyone's trying to do, and it's in this crazy heat, especially down here in Tennessee. So anyway, y'all take care and have a great night. Bye-bye.